there are current 100,000 unfulfilled positions in the IT sector. According to the IT Association Assespro, that number may jump to 500,000 by 2024. This problem is huge, is vast, and at BayBrazil, we wanted to contribute a little bit to bridge that gap. So we launched a social impact program focused on connecting social startups with these guys here, professionals, mentors, engineers, product experts, and connecting them for sessions with mentorship. So we've been doing that. We launched this program last year, and our goal is to really help the innovative startups that are working in products and services to address this unfulfilled market, to work on technologies of upskilling, reskilling, that are training the young workforce of Brazil. We want to do our little part and support and connect these startups, teams with mentors, with advisors and potential investors. So this year we have two co-founders of the two startups selected this year. Please join me here. Aline Góes, co-founder. Where's Aline? Come up here. Aline Góes, co-founder of BayBrazil. Thank you, Aline. Please join me here. Edu Mufarej, co-founder of Galena. Yes, they are doing an amazing job. So please sit down. I want to start with you, Aline. What is BayBrazil?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me here. It's a huge pleasure. BayBrazil is a scalable model to help low-income people to drive through technology and education. We started in 2017, and we help the young and adults from our slums to learn how to code, to learn soft skills, agile methods, and not just to learn, to practice, to experiment how to deliver real projects for great companies, and this way they can build a great career and start a new way in their lives. You know.
And you work with some kids from favelas in Rio.
Yes, not just in Rio, all over Brazil. We have our model is hybrid, so we have
hybrid.
Yeah,
model.
we have students. We create social tech hubs inside the slums, and we have online platform as well. So every year we graduate more or less 500 students from slums, and we connect them with the great companies, with the market, but before they go to these companies, they have the opportunity to learn by doing, delivering software for real companies like Sírio Libanês, PagSeguro, BTG Pactual, some of our clients, because we have a school and we have a software house. So a space to learn and a space to practice. That's it.
Excellent, Aline. Congrats. And Edu, tell us about Galena.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me here. It's great to see this conference happening. I made a comment yesterday as someone that had been involved at the Brazil Silicon Valley meeting. Maybe you guys should try to get together, do 2 events per year, joining efforts and forces, because this is definitely, an important thing. And this event happening for Brazil at this point, I heard the testimonials here of your friends who have been supporting you. I think, the world is going to shift away from China, as we all know, and especially the Western countries, and that's a massive opportunity for countries like Brazil. And we need to be able to tap that well. I think we need to be prepared. We need to make sure that entrepreneurship is strong, that rule of law is strong, and that ultimately, Brazil becomes, a good place for investors to put their money and, to make their bets on entrepreneurs. So this is very important, and continuing to do that is I think, essential for the future of the Brazilian technology and the Brazilian entrepreneurship scene. So Galena essentially is a very simple model. Galena trains kids that come out of the public school system, which is roughly 85% of students in Brazil. They finish school in public high schools, and we train them to navigate from finalizing high school to enter into their first jobs. As we all know, going to university historically has been probably a very challenging effort for most of the middle class and lower middle class Brazilians. So what we're offering to them is a pathway to navigate successfully from finishing high school and entering the job market. We started about a year ago. So far, we will have by the end of this year over 1,000 people that have come to our program. Our placement rates are above 90%. So people who go through the program actually get a job offer. And essentially our obsession is with outcomes. Education, historically, in every place, but in Brazil specifically, has been all about monetizing the student and less about providing a different pathway or an opportunity to achieve a different journey. And we are operating under the opposite model. We're completely based on the student success and the outcome of the student, which is something new and that very few people have tried. We're not the only ones, but very few people have tried. But I think it's the most honest way of delivering a product. Is okay, if you commit to us, we will commit to you, and the success of the student is our success ultimately. So we had the privilege of having Autos investing as our lead in the Series A. We're here represented by Te, who you listen afterwards. It was their first investment in Brazil, which we take a lot of pride and as well as a lot of responsibility. But just reemphasizes that Brazil is an awesome place if you like problems. It's a horrible place if you hate problems. It's better to live in Norway or Switzerland. But if you have problems, as we have problems, we have entrepreneurs, we have a big addressable market, we have capital markets, we have financing. So that's the biggest opportunity we have ahead of us. And we need people who will be prepared to lead those challenges in one hand, and also we need a workforce that is prepared to be part in this process. And we know that our productivity has been stagnated over the last 30 years, and we need to be something scalable about it. And that's the core of the mission of the Galena, is to support young job seekers in their quest for employability and the success in their business lives.
Thank you. For the American friends that are here, give us an overview of education in Brazil, a little bit more deep on your experience. What will take for Brazil to fulfill these 100,000 unfulfilled positions in the IT sector? What will take for Brazil to lift the youth that has talent but does not have opportunity or does not have skills? Edu, why don't you?
Okay, so talking broadly about Brazilian, essentially starting from K-12 education and then moving on to higher education, we have Brazil has gone through, since the 1950s, in a process of granting access to education. Up until 1950, only half of the Brazilian population would actually have access to schooling. And there was a push between 1970s, 60s, 70s, and 80s to improve and democratize access, which I think which we achieved, right? Today, if you're a kid in Brazil, the likelihood that you will not attend the school is very little. There will be a spot for you, and before there were no spots. But while we granted access, I think we lost in quality. And we also have had a more dramatic issue, which is essentially most of the country's elite, from the middle class up, they completely abandoned the public school system in K-12. And my mom is a public school teacher, my grandmother is a public school teacher, I was a public school teacher myself. So the reality is that, public schools is not in the reality of the people who are making decisions in Brazil. And so essentially, I think we provided access, and we were not whatsoever concerned with, the pathways and the quality. And we also created the most unequal educational system in the world, which is based on free universities for people who can actually afford. If you raise your hand here, how many of you Brazilians have gone to a public university? Okay, how many of you could have paid for that university? But you didn't, because it's not even allowed, so it's not to blame anyone. So it's a system that is designed essentially for you to prepare and have access to higher education for free, which it wouldn't be sustained in any other country in the world, and that's part of the educational reform that will have to be pushed over time. So, talking in perspective, where we are today, I think we have access. We need to start addressing the issues beyond access. The first issue is early childhood, which is a municipal responsibility. Early childhood, there is, most of the municipalities in Brazil, there is a lack of availability in spots and in creches and, daycare. So that's one thing that needs to be universalized. Parents, moms, they sometimes don't work, they can't bring income because they don't have a place to leave their kids, or if they leave the kids, they live in a very precarious situation. So that's one issue to be addressed. Then on elementary school, that's the area that Brazil has done a better job in improving part of the gaps, especially in maths and Portuguese. And where we are completely lost is in middle school, and then that leads to a very strong high school disaster. So middle school, which is the transition, that's where Brazil needs to pay more attention now. And the results in high school are very disappointing because we have very high dropout rates. We have absenteeism levels from teachers and the students, which are also very high. So that leads to a structural problem that will have to be addressed. Having said that, there are some measures that are addressing and helping to fix the problem. First, implementation of full-time for Americans doesn't mean anything, because here school is from 8 to 3, but in Brazil is partial hours, it's 4 hours a day only in the public school system. But now most of the states are implementing universalization in high school, so high school becomes a full-time schooling. That's reducing, if you just look in the state of Pernambuco, for example, where they implemented full-time schooling, that has reduced crime rates at that age group by more than 50%. So, and that's been explored in several states in Brazil, and I think we're moving towards, slowly, but a path towards universalization. The other element, two elements which are important in the policy that a lot of people don't see, is the implementation of a national curriculum, which Brazil never had. So essentially each state had the capacity, or municipality had the capacity to define what they wanted to teach and what they didn't want to teach. Now there is a national curriculum in place, it's called BNCC, and also there is another element, which is the high school reform that allows students in the equivalent of the sophomore year to define which pathway they want to have. Historically, Brazil made, I think, the worst decision you can, which is mandatory schooling in 12 subject matters. Mandatory schooling in 12 subject matters. That's unheard of, not even in Korea. I think it's that much. So every student has to study Portuguese, math, chemistry, physics, biology, Spanish, English, geography, history, Brazilian history, global history. So that leads essentially to a completely disconnected, because people want to study what they are, barely familiar with. And then you put a kid that has gone through the middle school, losing connection with maths, and he puts him in a chemistry or a physics lesson, they're gonna fail. That's why our failure rates are so high. And now it's changing, so the students, they can actually choose the pathway that they want to take. And they can choose from 5 pathways. One is more STEM related. Brazil hasn't done a good job in pushing people towards STEM. We all know that. We're too focused on humanities. That's most of the Latin countries are like this. France is like this. Spain is like this. Italy is like this. But we need to push more STEM. There is, of course, the health area for like nurses and doctors, but the most important is the 5th itinerary, which is going to improve access to technical education or vocational schooling when you are in high school. And that's most likely going to be picked by half of the students in the Brazilian high school system. So that's going to be a game changer, because people that would normally go to school and not see a connection between what they're studying and the fact that they're going to have to work next day, now they're going to study things that are work related. So that's going to drive retention, and that's going to drive the perception that this is a good, that the school is actually providing value to a student that needs to finish school and start working. So all of that to say that I'm pretty optimistic on the direction that Brazilian education is heading. I don't want to make this discussion party centric or non-party centric, but the last 4 years have not been good. I hope that they improve. Frankly speaking, from a policy standpoint in education, everybody that knows education knows about it. But we need to move fast, because we need to instead of trying to save the job spots or the positions, let's preserve, cobrador de ônibus or, the people who work in the gas stations. No, we need to preserve people, and we need to prepare people for the jobs of the future. And we have not been doing that. So hopefully, under, this context that I mentioned to you, I think we will go through a different path. And just a last comment, so I think the transition that we're going through, which is going to be increasing vocational, increasing technical degrees, this is one area that Galena is really focused on, increasing apprenticeship models, so we start working earlier with the companies and so on, and improving that, because our apprenticeship model needs to be reviewed. It's very backward looking, nobody ends the program happy. And finally, allow people to go to college, if there is a need for them to go to college. Otherwise, start recognizing that lifelong learning is a reality, and achieving micro certificates and skills, or micro certificates throughout their journey makes much more sense economically and from a time perspective than going to a 4-year degree and earning a piece of paper that has a decreasing lifetime value. So that's more or less of the context of Brazilian education.
Digital inclusion in Brazil faces many challenges. 33 million people in Brazil is in a situation of food insecurity. 29 million people don't understand what they read. And when you look to connection and the use of the computer as a common use, as a tool for common use, in the upper classes, you have 100% of people with connection with computers. When you look to the lower classes, just half have connection, and it's a bad connection. And just 13% have access to a computer. So it's changed completely the scenario, And those people are half of our population. It's a lot. It's more than 100 million people. It's a lot. And when we look inside the favelas, the slums, the situation is a little more difficult because the violence and because of other things about the territory. And what we have, when we look to our situation, we have so many coding schools in Brazil, but they serve the upper classes. You know, VinaWeb chose to serve the lower classes because we understand that if you really want to close the gap, or to close the digital talent gap in Brazil, if you really want to empower diversity, we have to look to this population. You know, just inside the slums in Brazil, we have 17 million people. 17 million, it's a lot. It's much more than the population of countries like Cuba, Portugal, Belgium, you know? So we have to look to this population. We have to find a pathway to help them to success in their careers. And VinaWeb is doing this, not just training them for technology, but helping them know how to practice this in real world and to deliver, because in this professional, the value is where you can do, what's the result you can show for the world, for the company. And it's fantastic when we see young boys and girls delivering high quality software for great companies and discover day by day they can do this. They can improve themselves. They can add value to a company, and they can use these abilities to improve their lives, and not just their lives, their families' lives.
And tell us about your structure today. So you provide the computers, you invest in computers for these students to come, and you have the space. What is your structure right now?
Yes, our business model has three steps: school, studio, and companies. Schools, we create social tech hubs inside the slums to give this population access to connection, to computers, silent, you know, a place to study, to work. We offer psychological support, we offer mentorings, social and emotional skills. It's not just a school, it's a welcoming place to thrive, you know. And after this step, we have the studio. The studio is our software house. It's the way we make money and do all the system to thrive, you know. And we design and develop the websites and mobile applications for companies. They pay us for this, and we put seniors programmers, seniors developers with juniors development to solve the solution. Yes, and it's fantastic because it's the way to prepare the new workforce with high quality to understand what the market needs, what the company needs. And for the company who hire us, our squads is fantastic too, because our price is much more competitive than the other players. The companies can receive ESG benefits, and the company receive the access to our students to hire from them. But they don't look to a paper or a curriculum. They look for what they are doing, what they are delivering. And it's much more value than just to see a paper, you know.
And I want to hear how Galena is organized as well. But before that, so we had a few sessions of a mentorship with the local Brazilians that work here in tech companies, and with both, we had joint sessions with both companies, and then we had individual sessions with both of your companies. And just for the ones that are not involved here, if you can say briefly, what kind of a help do you need, Aline? And I'll ask you the same before I do. What kind of a help you need right now, or mentorship? I think you are also fundraising. So tell us, do your pitch.
At this moment, the most important thing. At this moment, the most important thing for us is to find more clients. You know, our model is working very well, and every time a company hires us for a year, we open a new school inside the slum.
Look at this. How is that, Roberto? Take a bleep.
So
I want one.
So that's why we want this. You know, we want new allies to help us to expand this model. Every tech company has a big backlog with a lot of things to do. So we can help. We want to help. And when we do this together, we have the opportunity to open a new school inside the slum and help hundreds of young and adults to learn how to code and drive. So I think we have this moral obligation to think about this population that represents half of Brazilian people.
Edu, tell us a little bit about the Galena structure and how mentors that are here can help more Galena.
So essentially, Galena is a structure, as I said, selecting kids from the public school system in Brazil, training them in an immersion of 4 months, and releasing them to the market. And when we release them to the market, it means they're training full-time, synchronous, project learning, and with a tutor, but they do a lot of the work amongst themselves, because ultimately what we try to teach is how do you become someone that people like to work with? Because that's, on the social side, emotional side, that's the most scarce asset. When you get someone like our audience is essentially 75% black, 70% woman, and we're not like an affirmative action company, it's just that we're serving Classe C. This is the reality of the Brazilian middle and the base of the pyramid. We don't even need to go to slums. Our students, their parents are Uber drivers, their moms are housekeepers, and so on. So that's or delivery individuals and so on. So, and the biggest challenge we have is how do we, as corporates, like on the enterprise side, companies that historically have been, I would say, spoiled with the abundance of unskilled labor in Brazil, which we all know is a reality. So you open a job position and you have tons of people applying, but most of these people are not qualified. And a lot of the companies, they put a very high bar. And one of the bars is you need to have a university degree to work as SDR, for example, or to be in like a customer representative area, because that's the bar that the companies have established. But the job market is changing, and those individuals that we're training, they may go to college, but right now their priority is to bring money home, and they're super qualified, they're super well trained. But the biggest demand that we have is how do we help the job market, or essentially the HR people and the people that are doing the hires, to hire without a university diploma, because the university diploma may come, but that's going to be a long process. So hiring high school kids from the public school system and hiring people who have been prepared, who have certificates and technical certificates and vocational for entry-level jobs, instead of looking for people with university degrees. I understand that that's a leap of faith from the employer side, but that's necessary. Otherwise, we're going to continue to be in this vicious cycle where, inclusion, a lot of the companies said like to have more, people of color and black in my organization if they have a PhD from MIT. Yeah, but that doesn't happen, because essentially these people will never make it. So how do we, make at scale processes that, enhance access? And I can tell you, the NPS of the employers that have hired from us is very high. We have, last time we measured was 96. So the companies like the talent that we're bringing to them. And most importantly, they recognize that, it would be almost impossible to find those individuals because we have a lot of guys that have gone through our program who used to work at McDonald's and Burger King. And they do very good customer representative professionals. They do very good inside salespeople and so on. So that's one element that I think it's very much needed as, employers, they also need to adjust because all the speech about diversity and so on, when, there is a bull market, that's a priority. In the times that we are today, that's no longer a priority. The priority is survival. So, but just give the benefit of the doubt. There is a lot of talented people that probably come through her program, that comes through Galena. We will be preparing thousands of people every year, but we will prepare assuming that the job market is ready to absorb them. The job market is not ready to absorb them, then it's probably easier to do something else because we're trying to do something that hasn't been done as of now. And last but not least, just to thank Rodrigo Schmidt, Head of Engineering at Meta, that helped us in the mentoring, Martin Spear, VP of Engineering at BigPay, Daniela Jorge, Chief Design at PayPal, Mario Rodriguez, Data Science at Salesforce, Avanish, which was here, Felipe Radar, Data Science at Airbnb. So this is just, to say thank you to BayBrazil. When we got into this program, frankly speaking, I wasn't expecting much. But, what I hear from my product team and my tech team is that the mentoring has been amazing. So I suggest, if you have, companies that are in a stage like ours, it wasn't a waste of time, it was actually the other way around. So thank you very much, Margarise.
Thank you. And thank you, guys. Guys, I think it's extremely relevant what you are doing. I highly encourage you to stay in the happy hour, talk to Aline and to Edu, get involved. If you are working in a company here that you not yet involved as a mentor, please get involved. I think it's amazing and congratulations. Count on us on whatever we can do on this side. And I'll let the both of you to do final comments for a few seconds. Aline.
I just want to thank you for this space. It's fantastic to discuss social impact and business model. Those things don't need to be separate. We can put it together and use the power of marketing to do more social impact. And that's what VayNaWeb is doing. We are not philanthropy, we don't need philanthropy. We believe in our business model and we want to compete in the software market. So we are
Well, my message is more generic. I think, we heard here before and we heard throughout these days, it's Brazil is not an easy place, as we all know, but at the same time, it provides many opportunities. There's so much to be done. And most importantly, I think it's, we have our own problems. And because we have our own problems, we need to be crafting our own solutions. And I'll tell you, in human capital, the reality of developed markets is so different from the reality in Brazil that, looking at a company, what they're doing in the US where unemployment is zero, when you go to a restaurant, they try to hire you and so on. So we need to believe that emerging markets can be a hub for solutions, and because we have our own problems and we need to put together and understand that, our solutions can be crafted by ourselves, and that we can be innovative, that we can think around, and that we just don't need to copy things that people are doing in the US, because the US is a different spot relative to Brazil. So, we need to believe that we can find our solutions. We can, of course, interpret, copy, whatever you want to say based on other economies, but essentially, we have our own problems, and most of the solutions that we can think about, and I can say that by having founded Renova and also Galena, is this thing that when you build, someone comes to you and says, I don't know why someone didn't do that before. So, when you think that something hasn't been done, it's because someone hasn't done it. It's not because that's not a good idea. Brazil is not an efficient market. There is so much to be done. So just to encourage all of us here to continue trying to tackle the problems of our country, which are so relevant, and at least if we achieve something, we're going to give, we're going to get some reasons to be proud of. Thank you.
Hey, hold to that.